Eric I Guess presents a Five Nights at Freddy's timeline you can actually sleep to, written by Eric I Guess, based on the works of Scott Cawthon. Prologue. Whether you call him the man behind the slaughter, the Golden Bonnie killer, or the purple guy, the infamous serial child killer was once a man dancing around in a silly bear costume for the money of some easily amused hick Americans. The man once known as William Afton couldn't help but admit that underneath his cold and calculating exterior, there was still that little dirt-poor British boy who broke into the local theater to watch the latest plays growing up. That love for theater and desire to rise above his station led him here, to the small town of Hurricane, Utah. The citizens of this town held an annual celebration of the local agricultural output known as Fall Fest, because who wouldn't be proud of exporting nuts and apricots to the rest of the states? William supposed the name Nutfest was struck down for obvious reasons. William decided to attend the festival out of curiosity, coming across a small pop-up food stand promoting a restaurant named Fredbear's Singing Show. The idea of an establishment calling itself a show whilst selling burgers and fries confounded William, but he went to the booth anyway for a quick bite. The line at the stall was slow, so William struck up a conversation with the young man manning the grill and pizza oven, a fellow named Henry Emily. The restaurant belonged to his parents, opening some 30 or so years ago, and with his parents ready to retire, the business was soon to be his. The man had lofty dreams of being an engineer, but with his car payments and saving up for both an engagement ring and a home, he had no choice but to stick to his parents' struggling business. He did have one outlet for his frankly impressive knowledge of engineering and mechanics. He helped build and maintain the mechanical games and parade floats for this small town harvest festival alongside an old college buddy, a man named Edwin Murray. William in turn confided in Henry how his own dreams had been diverted by his lot in life. William had once fantasized about being a classically trained actor before ultimately taking business classes. He even divulged a dream he once had of turning down a big Hollywood contract to pursue being an on-stage auteur dedicated to his craft. William did not divulge that he knew deep down that such a scenario was ludicrous. There was no reality where he could turn down the pay of a Hollywood franchise star. Feeling comforted by the man he had just met, Henry asked for a favor from William. In addition to running the food stall, Fredbear's Singing Show was set to perform for the crowd of the festival, but the performer Henry had contracted to wear the titular Fredbear suit had fallen ill. Henry was set to perform himself, but his friend Ed had run into a snag in his repairs, so Henry had to step aside and help him. William saw this as the perfect opportunity to gain the trust of the man who so fascinated him, and quickly agreed to perform on stage. This suit was a rather simplistic depiction of a bear with golden brown fur. The star-studded purple vest it came with felt tacky and cheap. The purple bow tie and top hat were fading to reveal the black plastic base under the admittedly charming purple exterior. The head with its cartoonishly large eyes reeked of cheap cigarettes, much less appealing than the smoke of artisanal Cubans that William had the habit of stealing in his youth. Nonetheless, William did find a certain charm in the suit. It gave him the same feeling as a worn-down teddy bear whose neck had been deflated from a child's hugs. William took to the stage and performed for the crowd, earning thunderous applause. He danced around the stage and sang covers of the popular songs he had heard on the radio. William thought the songs were trite and simplistic, almost beneath his talents, but the energy he brought regardless was a crowd pleaser. William did, however, note that there was a certain poetry in performing songs largely written by British men who became rich by flooding the American radio. He finished his set on a more somber note, performing a more laid-back performance of the newly released single, Yesterday by the Beatles. William could not quite relate to the song. He was never one for living in the past and found the message a bit dramatic, He was older now than McCartney was when he wrote the track, but he could not honestly say any day in his past was better than the present moment. William only felt himself get wiser and more refined with age, rather than becoming less of a man. Regardless, he knew this song would be a hit with the crowd. Americans had an odd tendency to glorify a golden age that never truly existed, a tendency that made them gullible and easy to manipulate by those seeking to exploit their misguided nostalgia. Henry did get to see part of the performance after all. Edwin's mechanical error turned out to be far simpler than the man had characterized. Will's movement and mannerisms on the stage impressed Henry, and he felt his voice fit Fredbear far better than the performer he had scheduled that day. He was particularly moved by Will's rendition of The Beatles at the end of his set, the song reminding him of his college days and the early stage of his current relationship, back when the two were high school sweethearts sneaking out of the house, before bills and mortgage rates drained him. Henry wished he could bottle William's talent and inject it into Fredbear himself, capturing it for eternity. This idea gave Henry an epiphany, and once William left the stage, Henry offered the foreign man a beer at his apartment, a request William happily obliged. The two talked long into the cold, dead hours of the night. Henry had come to naively trust William, mistaking his huckster ways as honest business acumen. William, on the other hand, became fascinated with Henry. Here was a man who was a genius in robotics, yet he was unable to make use of his gifts. A man who had such ambitions and dreams, yet could never make it out of his hometown of Hurricane. Henry had everything a man could ask for: a steady career, a beautiful girlfriend, and the respect of his peers. In other words, Henry had all the qualities William deserved. William was obsessed with and in adoration of Henry. William was jealous and resentful of Henry. All of this led William to immediately agree to Henry's grand vision, Fredbear's Family Diner. Henry knew Fredbear's was in desperate need of a rebrand, and watching William on stage made it clear that William's talents could be the key to saving the restaurant. Inspired by the works of Walt Disney, Henry proposed replacing the on-stage performer of Fredbear with an animatronic wearing the Fredbear suit, allowing the two men to focus on the behind-the-scenes aspects of running a diner-style dinner theater. William's voice and performance would serve as the blueprint for Fredbear's routines and mannerisms, and spare costumes could be worn by the restaurant staff to give the illusion that Fredbear was stepping off stage to greet customers. Henry would even teach William the principles of robotics so he could help with the technical side of the diner. William even suggested his voice be lent to a secondary performer, with him aiding Henry in his own performance so he could maintain ownership of the Fredbear character. Henry saw this as the perfect opportunity to combine the men's talents. William merely saw it as an opportunity to keep Henry close. In order to build out the world of Fredbear's, William introduced a second character to assist in Fredbear's songs, a yellow rabbit that William had creatively named Bonnie. In addition to Bonnie's golden fur, the character would play a banjo, sport a sparkly purple vest, and wear a purple bow tie to match Fredbear's. With the musical duo in place, Henry and William got to work getting everything needed to build Fredbear's. The only snag in opening the restaurant was a costuming issue. William found the prospect of having two versions of the costumes, one for the stage and one for the staff, tedious and trite. Instead, he and Henry developed a new form of robotic skeleton for the characters, one that had spring-loaded mechanisms that could be wound back to allow a human to wear the robot as a suit. While wearing these spring-lock suits, a person could walk around the restaurant and serve pizza, giving the illusion that Fredbear and Bonnie were living, walking characters rather than being bound to the stage like most animatronics. A secondary advantage of this skeleton design was that it was easier to do repairs or swap casings. In most animatronics, the robot's form and the construction of its exterior suit intertwine. This often makes it difficult to switch one robot shell with another, or access the internal robotics for repairs. William and Henry's designs instead use an exterior casing, or suit, and an interior endoskeleton. This way, William and Henry could easily add or replace characters without having to create brand new designs for the internal mechanisms. This process only deepened William's fascinations with Henry. William started keeping a journal on the opening of Fredbear's, but it quickly devolved into a journal of William's thoughts on his business partner. William quickly began to view his relationship with Henry as one of competition, rather than collaboration. Near the end of construction, Henry had saved enough to propose to his girlfriend, and while William was outwardly supportive and congratulatory, internally he felt a twinge of jealousy. That night, William went to the one bar in town, a small pub named Junior's. Due to Utah's confusing alcohol laws, the bar was technically only available to paying club members and their guests. William often wondered why he had moved to Utah in the first place if it took so much hassle to get even a half-decent beer. While there, William met a charming young woman who had just gotten out of a bad relationship. She was a dancer, she was attractive, and William was able to make her laugh, which to William was enough to offer her a proper date. End of preview. The full video of part 1 will be coming soon. Be sure to subscribe to see when it releases. Special thanks to YouTubers T-Dreads, Fry Toast, and Gibby's Horror Homestead for inspiring the format of this video. And special thanks to ID's Fantasy for teaching the proper pronunciation of Hurricane, Utah.